Welcome back to another episode of Data Analytics Chat. I'm Ben Parker, data recruiter and podcast host, looking to share knowledge and insights to the data community. Today, I'm excited to welcome Aaron Han, the Chief Artificial Intelligence Officer at ArcelorMittal. Pleased to have Aaron to join us today to share insights and his experiences. In today's episode, we'll explore his career journey, how he got started, some pivotal moments that shaped his career path, and his transition into AI and big data. Aaron, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Ben. Thanks a lot for having me on it. Some exciting topics ahead. Looking forward to it.
Brilliant. So let's dive in. Obviously, you've done really well in your career. You've progressed to
Thanks.
C-level. So do you want to share your journey and what inspired you into the field?
Sure. Yeah, really no problem at all. Right. So I think, like everyone that's involved in AI at this moment in time of my age, when I started off in primary school, the artificial intelligence, even IT wasn't really a subject. Honestly, I had aspirations of being a footballer, but like many kids of my age. But I do remember that in school, statistics were always interesting to me, and then when I started to finish up in school and think about what to do in university, there was a lot of exciting things happening in California. And you can imagine from an Irish boy coming from Dublin, California seemed so glamorous, so exciting, sunshine for once. And so I decided then that I wanted to do a career in IT, but really in computer science. I did a degree, but really very broad. I had no particular focus at that time on what area. So then while building projects during my university time, I kind of start gravitating towards being the kind of data guy. And in our projects, we had a very good developer. We'd have someone like a project manager, and then we need someone to set up like backend databases, Oracle, RAC, SQL Server, how to do data modeling. And so I really gravitated towards that area of study. So I was kind of always in the group. That was my introduction to data, and that was that person. At the end of my degree, I kind of saw a great opportunity to get more value from data. I know it's funny to say that now, but at that time, data was just seen as a back end service. The value of data wasn't there. So I did a master's on location and architecture and methodology for location based services, which was a precursor to Google Maps. As you can imagine, when Google Maps came out, a few years later, I kind of put my paper to shame. But I realized I was on the right path. And thanks to that master's, I got an opportunity to work in Ordnance Survey Ireland, which was around digital mapping, transformation, spatial. And then I started working as an Oracle consultant. And while working as an Oracle consultant on data, it gave me my first introduction of working directly with actually clients, with business. It was very different. Beforehand, I was in a back office, just building out, databases, data schemas, replications, working maybe with a few application engineers. And then I started to transform to meeting customers, understanding their issues, working on quite big systems, from voting systems to hospitals, across the globe. And I found that quite exciting. It's good. Fast forward a few years later, I got married, had kids. The traveling was not as glamorous as it used to be. And I got an opportunity to join UBS. So at UBS, my main focus was supporting and working again on Oracle, but working with the risk and analysis team. So they used to use risk modeling. That's how old I am. That was before machine learning. And that really, again, gave me an insight of having to listen to the business. We would build these risk models running on Oracle data. We kind of had one of the first cross-functional teams where we'd have the statistical team, the analysis team, the business analysis, the credit risk advisor, and really working together in unity to see how we could get value from that data. Then through UBS, I progressed leading out their data and cloud transformation, which was also a great learning experience again. And again, UBS did something which was quite strong, is that we would bridge the gap closer to the business side, always working more and more closer with the business, starting to create those cross-functional teams. Then I had the opportunity to lead out the data AI and analytics, even more closer to the business, working around fraud detection, client advisory terms. And then near the end of my career in UBS, Gen AI started to come in. And again, Gen AI, we started to see where would that fit in helping the business to move forward. Could we help the client advisors to ask generic questions. They used to get random questions. Sometimes they get questions from clients saying, should I invest in Pokemon cards? So that was a great use case for Gen AI. But at the back end, we had moved from statistical risks to machine learning, and we were building our fraud detection models. We saw the predictive analysis of that. After about 11 to 12 years in UBS, I had an opportunity to move Holcim Lafarge, head of AI, data, and analytics, and that was very different. I'd never worked in a manufacturing arm, so that was much broader, more exciting. You have everything there. You go from, sites to logistics to transports to front office to back office to selling. Luckily, at that time in the Holcim, there was a very progressive CDIO who again wanted to bring AI closer to business. And we worked quite closely with business units to see how we could address their needs, bringing AI and analytics in. And then recently, I had an opportunity to join Arcelor. So I swapped concrete for cement, moving to the C-suite level as CAIO for ArcelorMittal, reporting directly into the CEO of AMDS downstream solutions. And again, our goal in Arcelor is really bringing AI closer to the business. Letting the business see the capabilities of AI, infusion that AI into their processes, but also giving them the capabilities of saying, okay, all right, this could be applied here, this could be applied there. The business have that business knowledge, and really we're just trying to accelerate them in order to get better competitive advantage, market share, and just distinguish ourselves from our competitors. So yeah.
Amazing, and a nice career journey. So I guess obviously there's been many like data professionals
Uh-huh.
looking to progress. I mean, what does the day in the life of a CDO? What's it actually look like for you?
Yeah.
Monthly, or weekly,
Yeah.
quarterly? I think people will get a feel for that because in the day that's you. I think you need them stepping stones like to gain that knowledge, don't you? And then people can, I guess, use your advice to sort of help them.
Yeah, look, I would say, look, having that let's say in CAIO compared to CTO or CDO, really for me changed a lot. It really made the difference. I'd done CTO roles before, I'd done CDO roles before, and they were they were a bit more vertical. You were focused on data, focused on technology, bit of day-to-day operations, a bit of making sure the business had it. But when the A comes into it, especially now the way CEOs are seeing it, is that they need to have that business acumen of saying, okay, how can AI be applied to business? So really, I have with every day is something new. There's a new model coming out, or there's a new opportunity to get on board, right? But really, I would say typical days are you go between technical discussions. I often think you need to break it down into three different phases. You need to know when to orchestrate, when to innovate, and when to actually, you just need to build on what you have already. And what I mean by that is that being a CIO, you can't be siloed the AI. So you need to orchestrate with your CTOs, you need to orchestrate with your CDOs. You don't reinvent the data map, you build on top of it. But then you need to have enough AI available so the business can innovate. But that has to be done in a governed way. So again, you go back to audits and everything else. But at the same time, there is day-to-day operations you need to respect, that you can't just pull everything out. So at a day-to-day basis, you have quite a broad range of topics, you from technical to business, from seeing if your RUSI is hit, seeing if your WAC is hit, seeing if AI is being applied to the right business stream, right division. You have your KPIs to report, which at the CIO level are, there's some of the strangest KPIs ever. Some of them can range from IT, but others will remain from revenue growth. The idea is to get IT embedded into our business, model, so we can grow. Then you have to manage the expectations. And I think that's where the balancing act comes. It's brilliant now that CEOs talk about AI, talk about, want to have it at the board level, but that also brings expectations. There's a lot of expectations on AI. There's an awful lot of people out there hyping things up at AI, but responsible AI can take time. It does take time to do. And you also have to build in the infrastructure there. There's a lot of competition in the marketplace with people. So if you don't have the right people, you can't build the right solution. So really, one part of our doing is when we're preparing our KPIs or when we're looking into different things that we need to do, we have a large technological aspect of projects being deployed, technologies, governance, and everything else. But then also on the other side, we're also reporting directly with business how we're improving the ROSI, how we're making sure that the AI is being applied to generate X amount of new customers, how we're increasing market share, sometimes M&As, if you identified, lead generation. So really you have a mix and match of days, but you're never short of people to meet. And it's probably one of the few roles I've ever had where I probably present and speak to probably 60% business and 40% IT teams. Used to be the reverse way around. But yeah.
Okay, interesting. So is it important as you progress then to obviously one get up, have that technical understanding, and then increase your domain knowledge?
Yeah, look, I was quite fortunate enough that data was my background, and then I got to work with some great risk modelers who brought me into understanding models, and then machine learning. Though for me, in some ways, AI kind of got easier as we progress. And now we have Gen AI with pre-trained models, so they fit in certain areas. So understanding where AI can fit in is where so I think it's important to have that domain knowledge. I always say it's important to know where you're weak at. Where's your weakness? And then where you're weak at, you bring in someone else that can help you in that domain. So I would say, look, if you're too technical, then you need to start listening and understanding the business enough. If you're too business orientated, you need to get a bit more technical. Now, I think personally, I come from a technical background, but personally, I think it's much easier to have, if you understand the business, to then bring in a bit of the technical aspect. Especially now, we have great podcasts like yourself that explain, how data works, how to get on board, and just really understanding where it can be applied. But really, the power of AI will sit within the business. You need to unlock the business potential with AI. It's companies. It's all about growth, revenue, dominance of markets, and that's what when I worked with Holcim, when I worked with UBS, and even Arcelor, that's what we look for. We look at the customers 5 years from now. We look at the journey 5 years from now, and we work backwards. And we say, okay, how can we get there? How can we be more customer focused? How can we make the day of the life of the customer easier? How can AI help us to achieve that? And that's really what it is, ensuring that the CTOs and the CDOs, that we have the right data, the right governance, the right technology, the right partnerships, the right scalability. Cloud plays a very big part in our day to day. Without the cloud, we would have a lot of difficulties. But at the same time, when you work in manufacturing, MES systems, we can't put them directly on the cloud. So we have, or sometimes the manufacturing sites are a bit too far away from the cloud. So we have a lot of edge computing. So really, as I said before, you need to know where to orchestrate. You need to know where your lane is. You need to stay in your lanes, make sure it's clear, and make sure you get the harmony across the C-suite level. But at the same time, you need to deliver fast. I read a statistic someone sent me to me. I don't know if it was a joke or not. That apparently in 18 months, most CEOs don't last more than CAIOs don't last more than 18 months or change after 18 months. And I really think that is the problem, is that to do responsible AIs or make a huge impact with AI in your business when you have an existing company, or especially take Arcelor, like it's a historical company of manufacturing. Holcim was the same. UBS has a large, rich history. Change management can take longer than the technology to implement. Startups, no, really fast. I think you can do it much faster with a startup. So understanding that change management or where it needs to apply, your CEOs can become frustrated. It's a bit like, I remember many years ago trying to do data master programs, mastering data programs. No one wants to hear about, okay, you've cleaned up much data, allows you to go faster. They want to see instant results. And so really, I think it's very important for anyone looking to do a CIO role. You need to have your quick wins in your pipelines, your low-hanging fruit. You need to identify them quickly. You need to work quickly with IT to make sure you get those quick tools in. I'm seeing, like for me personally, agentic AI and agents can help you give those very quick wins, that you're showing some progression while in the background you're working on your AI governance, your data governance policies, making sure your data is available, good quality, and making sure that you have a much larger projects in the background. So really, you need to have a multi-project approach to it with multiple lanes, horizontal and vertical. AI, we at Arcelor apply it horizontally, so we don't apply it vertically. We do vertical specifics, but we have very horizontal across. So that can take time, but then the gains is much bigger. So yeah.
Yeah, and I love what you're saying about change management, because I think like most businesses know where they're going, like A to B, don't they? And it's when you're moving a goalpost, obviously everything changes. And I think the communication, change management aspect, if you've got someone that can do the transformation stuff, that's where businesses succeed. That's where you're going to get your big wins, aren't you? Because if you can't get the change you want, you're just going to be chasing your tail all the time and you're not progressing. So then, obviously, touched on obviously some many different things that you're trying to achieve. So, what in today in the industry, what do you see as the big challenges that businesses are facing today?
I think honestly, I don't think they've changed that much. I think we still had all of us want to move fast. We don't want to miss out on the next big opportunity, right? And maybe AI has created this hype in this bubble, which can mean that businesses who had a business plan and a projection, a roadmap of where they want to achieve and where they want to go, are now sometimes looking at that and saying, "Oh, I have to tear it all up, start over again, get a CAIO, hire officer, bring someone in," and then they get delayed on their roadmap, and then they chase the AI dream. I don't think that is the case. I think if you have your business roadmap, you need to look at that and then you say, okay, look, where do you apply AI into that existing roadmap? And then you wait till you've built up that foundation layer and then you can go again. So I think what the difficulty is around expectations, and the speed of technologies at the moment. When we go back to what you're saying about change management, agility is even more important than it was beforehand. You need to be agile, just for the mere case of taking advantage of new models that come on the market, but also your competitors. We're not like when I worked in UBS, we built all our models. They were in-house, the proprietary models. Now we consume models from cloud vendors. So all our competitors, they have the same advantage there. They have the same technology stack as us, and they can easily have the same technology stack as us on the cloud. So it's really about how you apply it in the right direction. So I would say, look, managing expectations while maintaining the excitement around AI. You need to have that culture of growth. Democratizing AI is probably the trickiest thing I think anyone has to do coming in. And another thing I would say as well is that, look, for me, it's very important that AI sits at the C-suite level. Otherwise, it doesn't become core to the business. You don't have to report to on the board. You don't have such high level KPIs. It doesn't become a background hobby. And I think anyone who's looking at AI becoming a hobby right now will be left behind because, new companies are coming up, don't have the technical debt, don't have the problems with not being cloud first, don't have the problems of rigid change management, audits, compliancy, all those things mightn't be in place. So they can move a lot faster. And we see that in the marketplace as well. Look at the speed of fintechs compared to existing banks. Even if you look at the speed of delivery services, I have two boys, 14 and 16, And when I see how they use their phones and interact and work, like even now they don't use as much Google search, they use ChatGPT, they chat, but even now they stop using ChatGPT, they use another model, they use Mistral. They're very open and quick to adapt. I think if you're not you're not able to react to that because you've all this technical debt that you're carrying through. And if you try and go for a 10-year or a 6-month or a 7-month transformation to get there, you won't get there. Just the goalposts be constantly moved. So I think you need to start integrating it from the foundation, from the top to the bottom up. Start integrating it quickly, get your quick wins, build up your momentum, and then see, okay, can AI give us the business model of the future that we need to get the clients of the future or the customers of the future? So yeah.
So with obviously touched on expectation,
Mhm.
is that more of a education piece within the business? Because obviously it's not a quick. Projects are not quick. Like obviously,
Yeah.
especially I think a lot of businesses now, isn't it now? Like obviously, you need to get your data in order really, because
Yeah.
there's no point. I mean, so many clients want to implement, say Gen AI. I speak to so
Mhm.
many leaders, but they've got no reason. They just want to have it, I guess, like a tick on
Yeah.
their business sheet. They've got it. Like, and you need to implement your data because I mean, even if you look back, like you had data warehousing, and then it moved on to data lakes,
Yeah.
things like this. You need to get your data in order first because you've got your data, you know where you're at, and then you can apply it, can't you?
Yeah. No, completely. Look, if you don't have a good data strategy, you won't have a good AI strategy. That's for sure. But when you're presenting to a board, no one wants to really hear about a data strategy. It has to be
Mm.
now. It has to be a case of when you create that, you're doing an AI solution with a clear ROI. I see a lot of these chatbots, and I honestly believe it will be, death by a thousand cuts. It takes an investment. With AI solutions, we have constant inference. So it's not like traditional software development. We need shorter release cycle, feedback loops. We need to retrain models, but also for Gen AI, we have this tokens that cost constantly. So you need to be careful that what
Mhm.
you're building makes financial sense, but also that makes the impact. Now, okay, you create a chatbot that, okay, a customer comes in, uses, and from that chatbot, you get X amount of revenue increase. You have your ROI. But I think building out a lot of these tools, these chatbots, just for internal documentation or Q&A, it's very hard to get on it. Really, me personally, I'd put that to more as a low code agent or train up the teams from that perspective, right? So
Mm.
you touched on a good point there about education. So we also need to have an AI first culture, and in UBS, we had KPIs for that, OKR, sorry, that we would try to achieve that. But in some ways, you will get people who are super enthusiastic and want to learn AI. We have in Arcelor, very strong AI ambassador program where we train people along on AI, and the EU AI Act. Now we have to make sure that people who are using AI tools understand their responsibility. Um, and I think one way you can start from bottom up is that have a simple, not just AI introduction, but teach them prompt engineering, and then you'll pick out things that what direction they want to go in, and then for prompt engineering, there's many agentic AI platforms. They can start building out their own agents. We have some low code agents that they can even build out some very simple workflows. For extracting, they could get like emails. They can automatically respond to emails. They can strip off attachments. Very low code stuff that you can get people directly involved. But if that's not aligned with the strategy from the overall business directive, then you're going to have a mismatch. And also, what we're happening to do a lot is that we have to teach AI at the C-suite level, which is very different. And at that point, you need to show them how AI can be a tool that they can wield in order to create, the business of the future. And so sometimes what we do for that is that we sit down with the different CEOs of different business divisions at Arcelor. We do an exercise where we say, okay, look, if you had to recreate your business division again from didn't greenfield site, nothing exists here, where would you put AI and where would you put a human? And quite quickly they see that the humans go into the bucket of expertise, domain knowledge, innovation. That still stays there. But quite quickly, they can see with AI, and in particular Gen AI, they can get very fast so up and running with marketing, communications, a bit of internal policy development, multiple translation of documents, and it really helps them to kind of understand to set expectations and really see how they can apply AI to their business division. But it's very important to have that AI culture. And I know it's very hard, but I often think that what our vision is that we think big, we start small, but we scale quickly. And I think that's, for me, it's been so far it's been the most successful methodology that we have. Yeah.
Brilliant. So then looking back, were there key moments that shaped your career?
Yeah, like like everyone who's listening to this podcast, I would say, look, having a good manager gives you a good career. Like everything in life, we all learn from someone. There's always some form of mentoringship, and I had very good senior management that saw the advantage or the value of data. From UBS to Holcim, especially now at Arcelor, the CEO, is completely 100% engaged in how AI can transform the business and what we need to get that going. So really, I think having those people there. I would say the other bit is that I started off on the technical side, being a typical techie, a bit arrogant, business trying to tell me what they needed the databases for, how it should work, developers trying to tell me, how to do connection pooling, all those type of things. And then after a while, you realize you learn how to listen, not to push. And then by listening a little bit, you create that trust and you can actually achieve much greater solutions. And I think that's been the biggest difference to me at the moment. And from that, I would say one of key real world example is Holcim, that the delivery of Holcim Plus and the ability to sell cement using WhatsApp. It's not an idea I would have come up with, but it's an idea that came up from one of the salespeople in a workshop that we had, where we were just showing them AI tools and had nothing to do with WhatsApp at all. And they were like, "Yeah, look, I'd rather this would work for me. We could do this." And then we realized by working together we could come up with a business value model, and it was an innovator in the market that's available today. That's huge, very popular amongst units globally. So.
Yeah, no, I love that because I think the power is actually like, I mean, data you get now is you can do. There's a lot of tools to do heavy lifting. It's getting more creative and strategic, isn't it? So if you're like in these workshops, like, and just reviewing where you're at and look, how can we improve? And if you're getting a lot of minds in the room, you're going to get some good ideas. And then this again is like choosing the right ones that's going to make the right move. And obviously, it sounds like using WhatsApp was a great idea. So
Yeah,
then,
completely. And I would say, look, yeah, yeah. Go ahead, yeah.
go on. No, do you want to add something, Aaron?
No, I'm good. I was just going to say, look, look, we you have to use your own tools as well. Like the CAIO office in Arcelor, uses AI, for our daily. Like we have to, show that we can use it, and we can collaborate a lot easier now with people. We have so many tools to do that, and creating those little collaboration workshops. Okay, you could do 10 workshops, 100 people, maybe one day each. A hackathon we do as well. You might have 100 ideas, but you only need one or two that are unique. But if you don't create that environment of interest, culture, and trust, IT for a while had this kind of reputation of being, the department of no, governance, you can't do this. Business didn't want to do this, and there was a reason for that. You can't have data exposed, the data security policies, everything else. But I do believe now we are getting to the point with secure encaves on the cloud that we can enable business to go faster. And I think having those workshops is important because it's cross-functional teams is where we see where we get the biggest business impact. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. So then, as you touched on sort of getting the domain expertise, business
Mhm.
knowledge, what other skills do you need to develop most as you moved up the ranks?
Yeah, I would say you need to get a thick skin, of course,
Hmm.
especially, look, you need to be able to have a vision. You need to understand your end goal. I often explain to my teams, it's a bit like, okay, if me and you wanted to go on vacation together, Ben, right? Okay, we would pick a destination. That's where we want to go. But how we get there, we could get there multiple ways. We pick a path, but we're not too sure if it's going to be the right path, if we need to change that path. But we know where we have to arrive at a final destination. I think that was the difference. I think it was moving from a plan. So a plan is just execution to a strategy. And not necessarily because AI and things move so fast, your plan can't be too rigid. We take the analogy back again between me and you going on vacation together, is that if we pick a final destination, say we're going to Zurich in Switzerland, well, we can do boat, we can do plane, we can do train. One thing gets cancelled, we can
Mm.
change our direction. But the most important bit is that you arrived there and then, and the reason for you being there. So understanding why you're doing something. OKRs, I'm quite a fan of objective key results, so you can associate them down. And also letting everyone know that they're part of a much bigger picture. Like the engineers don't just think they're building code just for to complete the sprint or just for functionality, that they can understand how that plays a bigger picture into the business. And the reason for that is that then they have a much broader vision on what has to be delivered. We go back to the whole scene with the WhatsApp example. When we started off doing that project, we actually thought we did it, and there was too many questions. We'd have to ask them multiple questions, what product you're looking for, and everything else. And then we realized that while doing it, well, we already had the previous order of the client. So we changed the question around. We would show them the previous order and say, hey, you ordered this last week. You want to order something similar? This was a very different user experience,
Mm.
but the goal was still the same. How do we sell to clients? How do we have the customer in the pocket using WhatsApp and selling directly to them? But the route we took was very different. And I think this is where you have to see that it's not a technology question. From a technology stack was nearly identical from the start to the end, but we had that flexibility in our solution. The team could orientate in different directions. The IT made it available. The data, as you said, we had the CDO office. We have data experts there as well that understood what data had to be available. GDPR, especially over WhatsApp, we had to make sure that was all in place. But fundamentally, the solution probably changed 6 or 7 times. Whereas when I worked previously in IT solutions, we would have a requirement, we'd have a deliverable, and it would be delivered. We'd give it to business, and then it was wrong. We go back, we'd iterate again, but it was already a bit too late. Whereas now we have a much more agile, fluid iteration process. Failing fast for me is really important, and creating a culture that it's okay to fail. And what by fail, I don't mean releasing a product and it's gone onto the market and it doesn't work. Failing fast means that you need to. What I see at the moment, especially with AI, is a lot of POC purgatory. It's POCs, but a lot of them don't move to MVPs. And a lot of that is because they're trying to push AI where it doesn't need to be in some cases. But also, when you build something, and you should try and POC in 2 to 3 weeks, or 4 week sprints. Give it to the business. If they don't like it, close it down, fail, moves on, create the next iteration, next improvement, and then move forward. You need to POC much faster, put it in the hands of the business and see what works and what doesn't work. Because your target goal will never change, what you're trying to build the POC for, but how you do it or different functionalities will organically change over time. Same way that you look beforehand, I'm seeing a large change in the market of people don't build as many apps on phones. That was one of the reasons why we went to WhatsApp, is that we had an application, but people didn't want to download the applications. Customers didn't like it. We had to support it. Whereas really, we realized that we had to integrate more into day-to-day life. They had a phone, they had WhatsApp, but it's that integration that you need to do. And every time a new user gets a tool or they're using something, and that's a platform for us to communicate and only channel of some form, I would say you need to say to yourself, okay, how can my solution be in that platform? How can it integrate seamlessly?
It's putting the customer first in the day because you've made it easy for
100%.
them.
Yeah.
And it's just evolution, isn't it? Like people are now on the phone. WhatsApp is a key
Yeah.
component in most people's phones. And if you could do business like that, well, it makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Now, I guess at the start, you probably thought, no, it don't. But now, obviously,
Yeah.
looking at it, you've,
Honestly.
you've, you've,
Yeah.
you've gone through it and it's made a massive impact.
Yeah, yeah, and honestly, it's that you're like, security, everything else, you got to look into it. But when we talk about a culture and idea, that so having a common thread from the C-suite all the way down, you have to have one common thread, and it can't be technology because that moves and is not integrated. But having a common thread of customer first, everyone can relate to. So the engineers, when they're building it, you need them to think of the customers, think of the goal that they want to achieve, not think about that it's they're improving a prompt or changing the weights on the model. More on the thing of that, okay, when the customer uses this, what's the customer experience going to be like?
Yes, okay. All right, cool. Let's move on to the next question then. So, I guess, how are you staying relevant with the rapid changes in data and AI now?
So I travel quite a bit because due to my role, and I listen to an awful lot of podcasts. I find it the easiest way to
Okay.
consume data. I used to be an avid reader, but now I've gone a bit lazy. The reading, I usually fall asleep now, if I'm honest, right? But I noticed I can put a podcast in. I can walk when I'm walking through an airport, when I'm going for a run, when I'm, when I'm, if I'm in even when sometimes you're eating on your own, all these things you can be consuming constantly. And I have a lot of feeds, particularly your podcast, but also other podcasts that I listen to as well that you keep on the market trend. Now, I think the only difficulty is that sometimes you have um, a lot of information and a lot of hype, and it's very hard to find the good podcasts, and that's why look, I really only focus on podcasts where there's actually is someone that has a bit of experience of what they're talking about, that's done a role or that understands those things. So it's really very much like your podcast you're doing. I also have a few feeds. I have a little, Copilot chatbot that goes out, pulls down different feeds, summarize those things up for me. And when I can, I read through a lot. But really, um, I just try and consume as much as possible, filling in the gaps. So much so that when I'm not working, it's I'm so used to having that noise in my ears that it'd be a bit strange when there's actually silence and you actually disconnect. But yeah, but I'd say that's probably be the biggest change is that I went from in university reading a lot, research papers to now consuming a lot of data through podcasts and other various formats.
Yeah, I think now, I mean, look, you just whatever subject you want to look, you can just Google and then
Mm.
we'll type in a search podcast and that will come up, can't it? So it's something that's blessed nowadays. Also, you've got audiobooks,
Oh yeah,
so you can combine it
audiobooks.
with combine it with like walking, your exercise. There's so much you can do nowadays. There's so much out there, which I think is good. Because things do move a lot, and especially when you're getting senior, like you are moving away from the tech knowledge, but you still need to be there. And also, you need to also learn on leadership and other. You want to still build on that knowledge as well, don't you?
Yeah, completely. Look, it's not just the tech tends to move faster than the leadership side, but also what I do as well is I listen to up and coming podcasts or different things from usually created by Gen Z, the younger generation, and you kind of think it's very different. You can actually feel it in the podcasts, how they're created, different data, even how they speak. Sometimes I could do with a Gen Z translator, but I think to myself from a leadership, they're the next generation that's going to build the version of Arcelor for the future. So you need to know from a leadership how you can get the most out of them, how they can feel comfortable in a workplace. So really, for me, it's absolutely really brilliant. The fact that the content becomes so easy to digest from a generation that I mightn't necessarily interact with on a daily basis. I have two sons, as I mentioned before, but like they're busy, social lives, homework. I'm traveling a lot, So really getting that insight of what they think is important, has really been a game changer for us. And then when you meet them and you interview them, and you can relate to them a lot more. You can see what's trending and understand. So I think no, it's good. Audiobooks. I used to do a lot of audiobooks in the past, bit less now. Honestly, now it's a lot more podcasts. What's happening in the marketplace. From that perspective.
Okay, cool. And then, so in your career, have you faced a major setback?
Yeah, no, yeah, we have multiple ones. I've been through, you can look through my careers and companies, you'll see there's been a few mergers there that we've gone on, which normally meant that when you're trying to do anything innovative, when a merger happens, you have a slowdown in budgets, you have a slowdown in vision, slowdown in policies. So as many a times has happened that at the start of one year, we have a roadmap, we have a plan, we have a deliverable, and then halfway through it's all stopped. COVID was a great example of that. We had a large data mesh project that was ongoing that we had to slow down, which then impacted the AI projects and initiatives. And really, yeah, it's you can't predict. Well, we're trying to, but we can't at the moment. Like what will happen tomorrow? So you have to have that agility in. We always try and start projects with a bit of risk analysis that comes back from the UBS days of the risk analysis, and we try and factor in. But there's been many things that we've completely missed. COVID in particular, and
Yeah.
even now, COVID from a data perspective throws off all our models. Obviously, we didn't deliver as much cement, there wasn't as much buildings, not as much steel, there's not as much logistics, order management, stock management. So there are nearly years where we put as outliners just to remove them. But yeah, I think you have, and I mentioned before, you need to be thick skinned because you will have senior managers that have driven a company in one direction for X amount of years. And I always think of it at the wave when I'm old enough, I was there when e-commerce came about, and how companies addressed e-commerce, they all did it very differently. And even to this stage, I've seen during COVID, Nike got very heavily into e-commerce, which was great for them. E-commerce based companies boomed, but now people are going back to shops. You need to have that agility, and AI is a bit the same. You have to believe what you're doing will make a difference for the business, because you can even have that your senior level or your board does not believe that it will make the impact what it is, because you're probably addressing a different generation. And often I think of Nike, and when I listen to other podcasts, how company goes as a good example. They might have very heavily on e-commerce at a moment where companies didn't, and it paid off because of COVID, and then maybe it's paying off less now. So again, you need to be able to be reactive to the market, I think, and you need to believe in yourself. You need to believe that what you're doing will make a difference. Your team needs to believe that, because all doubters will come, because if they didn't, then you're not inventing, you're just building something that's already been built. And if you do that, you're already late to the market. So yeah.
Yeah, agree. I think like being reactive, and I think it's been adaptable, isn't it, in the time,
Yeah.
especially in these times. Okay, cool. So to end, then, is there a particular achievement you're most proud of your career?
Um, I've had, from a project perspective, I had a chance to work on some great ones from Holcim, the WhatsApp we talked about, but a lot about logistics, optimization, manufacturing. UBS, there was the whole mobile banking, pushing onto the apps. Arcelor, we're very heavily now into agentic AI. We're building out, we're deploying agents, across the board. We're seeing a real impact there. But really, I think what I'm most proud of, what I most enjoy is the journey. It's easy to look back on it now, but seeing all those changes, and then I think people I met along the way enrich your life. I really do. I'm still in contact with people and team members from UBS, and even from Holcim, and even from Oracle, from old clients. So you make those connections, coming from data, they're like data points for me, you could say. And I'd say it was all those data points that made me such a rich life. And I still think that it's the human connection that really makes all the difference. And then by having that focus when you see a product being released. There's no better feeling than a product being released, people using the product, and it's making the difference that you'd hope it would make the difference. Now, again, we go back to the thick skin. The feedback you get from those products or the different star ratings don't necessarily match, but being there, seeing it. So I would say a lot more on the journey than on a particular project and people who I've met along the way. And from, I would say to anyone looking to do this, I was born and raised in Dublin, Ireland, then went to France, then went to Switzerland, a bit of Germany. You need to take on the adventure. You need to be open, you need to be adaptive, you need to be agile to yourself. And I think maybe that's probably what I see as the biggest achievement. Taking on the challenges when they came, having the support of a great family behind me, but really, yeah, the journey itself. And then it's, hopefully it's not finished, Ben. There's still a large bit of it to go. So yeah, looking forward to the next stage.
Yeah, no. Obviously, no, you've had a great career, and I think it's very gracious of you to, because again, it is getting everyone involved, isn't it, on the journey? Because you can't do it yourself. Like end of the day, and plus you don't want to be the leader. That is one of them says it's all me. When it's a team effort, isn't it? End of the day, and I think the journey is the most important thing because, like you said, the failures, the setbacks, the challenges, the successes, that all builds your confidence, your success, and adds to you as a human person, doesn't it?
Yeah, completely. And as we started off the podcast talking about, I want to be a footballer. So like, if you take like even as football, like we all love sports because of the trials and tribulations, the ups, the downs, the lows, the your team does well, doesn't do well. Signs this player loses a match, they should win it. Why didn't they win a cup? So really, but you still support them, and it's that journey that enriches you. And yeah, I think you need to look at this with AI as a journey, and just be ready to be agile, adaptive, um, not be afraid to take that opportunity. If it fails, it fails. You move on. Not every project will be a success. Especially in AI, the amount of we build a lot of models and we release them, and then the market changes and the models become obsolete quite quick. Technology moves very fast. So really, don't be afraid to fail. Follow your passion. I think you need to be passionate about it though, because you will get a lot of knockbacks. So having that passion and vision and determination keeps you back on the right track.
Brilliant. Well, Aaron, it's been a pleasure having you on the podcast. So you've come across some great insights, knowledgeable, and I'm sure the listeners will find this really interesting and beneficial.
Cool. All right. Thanks a lot, Ben. Really appreciate it. Great time.